In a culture that loves loud comebacks, Meghan Markle's most powerful answer in 2025 did not arrive in a headline or a microphone moment. It arrived almost quietly, in a string of decisions that did not look dramatic on their own, but together began to shift the story around her. While commentators repeated the same line that she was finished, overexposed, or failing, something else was happening underneath. Projects that had been written off as doomed were reshaped. A brand that some said would never launch not only arrived but sold out. A couple framed as attention seekers spent much of the year being honored for work that has nothing to do with gossip and everything to do with children's safety and mental health. If there is such a thing as revenge in public life, this is what it looks like when it is quiet. Welcome to Royally Misrepresented, your calm space for context and facts. Here we slow down the noise around Meghan Markle and the wider royal story, and ask one simple question. What can we actually see? If you are tired of hot takes but you still want to understand, you are in the right place. In this video, we are going to look at how 2025, which many expected to be the year her experiment outside the royal family finally collapsed, ended up looking very different. We will start with the narrative of failure that followed her into the year. Then we will look at 3 areas where she quietly shifted the ground: her work as a producer, her role as a founder, and her advocacy around digital safety and youth mental health. By the end, you can decide for yourself whether you see a collapse or a different kind of comeback. It might be tempting to say that none of this matters, that this is just celebrity news, but the way we talk about Meghan in moments like this touches on bigger questions. It asks how we measure success for women who leave powerful institutions. Do we treat one cancelled deal as proof that someone is a failure, even when other projects are still growing? It asks how we talk about Black women and mixed-race women who try to build something of their own in spaces that were not designed for them. And it forces us to notice how quickly a single loud story can drown out quieter but more meaningful work. There is another question underneath. What does it look like to respond to years of hostility without simply feeding the same cycle? Does every attack demand an equally loud reply? Or is there a point where the most realistic answer is not a speech, but a body of work? With that in mind, let us begin where most coverage of Meghan started this year, with the idea that she was losing. Part 1. The story of failure. By the time we reached the middle of 2025, the dominant story about Meghan in much of the British press was simple. She was unpopular, overexposed, and running out of opportunities. YouGov favorability trackers in Britain showed that only around 1 in 5 people had a positive view of her, while roughly 2/3 saw her negatively, some of the lowest ratings on record for her. Those numbers hardly moved between surveys, reinforcing the impression that opinion was set. Comment pieces described Hollywood as having soured on the couple and framed their moves as increasingly desperate. Reports in late 2024 and early 2025 questioned whether their major streaming deals would survive. Their earlier contract with Spotify had ended in 2023, with public comments from one executive calling them grifters, which became a favorite word in some columns. Part 2. The producer. The first piece of her quiet comeback came through production. It is easy to forget that Harry and Meghan, released in December 2022, remains one of Netflix's biggest documentary debuts. It recorded more than 81 million hours watched in its first 4 days and was described by Netflix as the largest opening for a documentary in its history at that point. Their later projects did not repeat that level of impact. Heart of Invictus, Live to Lead, With Love. Meghan and the Polo docuseries drew more modest numbers and mixed reviews. Some were praised for heart and sincerity, others criticized as soft or overly polished. That is the reality. But the relationship with Netflix did not simply end in failure. After months of speculation and reports that the original overall deal would not be renewed, the couple announced a new arrangement in August 2025. This time, it was a multi-year first-look agreement. That means Netflix no longer owns everything they make by default, but has the opportunity to be the first partner for future projects. It is a more flexible model, the sort often used for established producers. Part 3. The founder. The second pillar of this quiet success story sits in her role as a founder. In early 2024, Meghan teased a lifestyle venture under the name American Riviera Orchard, with a carefully styled Instagram video and talk of home, cooking, and California. Over the following months, that brand faced visible challenges. Trademark records showed multiple categories under review, and the launch timeline shifted forward more than once. Those facts fed into a wider narrative that the brand was chaotic and possibly doomed. Then, in February 2025, Meghan announced that the brand had been renamed as Ever. In interviews and on the brand website, she framed it as a collection inspired by her long-standing love of cooking, entertaining, and what she called hostessing with ease. The first as Ever products were previewed around the time her Netflix series premiered and officially released in April. They included small batch jam, baking mixes, teas, and related home items. According to multiple reports, the initial drop sold out in under an hour. Later conversation with other founders on her own podcast included her description of building the brand as a constant state of recalibration, a reminder that this was not a simple plug in a name and collect the money project. It was work. Again, it is important to be clear. As Ever is a young company. We do not yet know whether it will still be here in 10 years or 5. Celebrity brands rise and fall. They can sell out quickly at launch and then struggle later. But at the very moment when some commentators were confidently predicting that the brand would never see the light of day, customers were buying the first products faster than the site could refresh. Part 4. The Advocate. The third and perhaps most serious part of this quiet success is the advocacy work that often sits in the background of coverage. Through their Archewell Foundation, Meghan and Harry have spent several years focusing on the impact of technology and social media on young people. In 2025, that work reached a new level of recognition. In October, they were honored at Project Healthy Minds World Mental Health Day Gala in New York, receiving the Humanitarians of the Year award. The organization described the couple's efforts as exceptional global work in building a safer, more equitable digital world for families and youth. In their remarks, Meghan and Harry spoke about protecting children, including their own, from online harms, and described this focus as some of the most meaningful work of their lives. Around the same time, Archewell announced an expanded partnership between its Parents Network and the advocacy group Parents Together, aimed at supporting families confronting online dangers, including emerging risks from artificial intelligence. Earlier, Archewell had already been a founding partner of the Responsible Technology Youth Power Fund and had supported reports on young people's experiences of growing up online. So what do we do with that tension? On one side, we have real criticism and undeniably low favorability numbers in Britain. On the other, we have renewed production deals, a sold-out brand launch, a continuing presence in audio, and recognition from serious organizations working on mental health and digital safety. You might look at that and still feel that some of the creative work is not for you. You might feel that parts of the public strategy have been clumsy. Or you might see, underneath the noise, a woman who has decided that the answer to being misrepresented is not to fight every sentence, but to keep adding pages to the record. I would like to hear how you interpret this year. When you think about Meghan in 2025, what stands out more to you, the critical reviews and negative polls, or the quieter, sustained work in production, business, and advocacy? Share your thoughts in the comments, and please keep them thoughtful and respectful. This channel is for people who are willing to sit with nuance rather than only cheering or booing. If this video gave you something to think about, you can support Royally Misrepresented by liking it, subscribing, or sharing it with someone who is starting to question the standard Meghan is failing story. The more of us ask for context and evidence instead of easy outrage, the harder it becomes for anyone's narrative to be written purely by their loudest critics. Thank you for spending this time here, for your attention, and for your willingness to consider a quieter kind of success. Take care of yourself and of the people around you. Until next time.